Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Man, there's nothing like summers in East Tennessee. Thunderstorms, wind damage, hail damage. If you've had damage to your roof, get a free estimate on a new roof from Daniel Hood Roofing, and then let them duke it out with your insurance company. He's done it for people on this set, I can tell you that. DanielHoodRoofing.com. You heard Bob Hodge smile. I'm going to laugh over here. I heard you smile. I can hear your smile, Bob. Thinking about Daniel Hood duking it out with your insurance company. DanielHoodRoofing.com. If you've got any kind of damage to your roof, now is the time to give them a shout. All right, let's take a look here. Vols in the NBA draft. This is a great comment here. The University of Tennessee put this out. Over the past 5 years, Tennessee has produced 7 NBA draft picks, tied for the 4th most among all schools nationwide during that span. And you see that the latest, and think about that. I mean, those of you who've followed Tennessee basketball for years and years, you've just never churned out talent like that. You've never been in the recruiting circles that you're in right now. And one leads to the other, obviously, but that's what Rick Barnes has done. He has elevated your program in terms of its national brand. But I do wonder, is he getting the best out of these guys while they're in Knoxville? Is he preparing them the way they need to be prepared? Here's why I say that. Julian Phillips, who you saw on that list, was drafted by Josh's Chicago Bulls in the 2nd round. Josh owns them, by the way. If you thought the Haslams were the only people in town that own pro sports teams.
That's why they won't spend on free agents.
It's Josh's Bulls. Anyway, he got him in the 2nd round, pick number 35 overall. Everyone praised his athleticism. They all say he's ready to play defense in this league right now. We just don't know if he's got any offense. Can this guy ever learn to shoot? Can he be an offensive player? That's what he's been knocked with. Well, his old high school coach had this to say in his defense. Julian does really well with coaches that instill confidence, basically tell him, shoot it. And there were times where confidence-wise, he didn't have the highest confidence at Tennessee at times because he didn't have the coaches who were telling him to shoot it. Now, I'm looking around. I don't see any jaws on the floor over that one. I think nobody's surprised that they're not focused on offense first. But my question, Josh, is Rick Barnes preparing these guys for the NBA at both ends of the court or just one end of the court?
There is a reason the coach is saying that. I doubt the coach is just coming up with that opinion out of thin air. So I have to imagine it comes from a close source closer to Julian Phillips, perhaps Julian himself.
Julian Phillips, yeah.
Yeah, we actually had the Vanderbilt game where we were curious. Did Rick Barnes literally tell him to shoot it because he passed up on the open dunk to draw foul instead?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We looked at Phillips as a freshman. We expected more in terms of what his offensive potential could be after the USC performance when he scored 25 points and didn't see it again the rest of the season. So why is that the case? It's easy to say, well, Julian's a one-and-done level player. He's an legitimate NBA prospect. He should have natural confidence. But if there is the emphasis placed on the defensive side of the court, which we talk so much about, and something goes wrong during the middle of the season, confidence might be lost when you're looking at other veterans who are actually leaving the team. So if I'm Rick Barnes, whether the criticism is unfair or not, I would be looking at that saying, is there something different we should be doing on the offensive side to make sure players don't have this feeling or opinion to where it actually does affect them on the court like it appeared to do with Julian.
And I'm so glad you brought that. I'd completely forgotten that. And we did talk about that week. And I remember pointing out after he didn't go in there, if he had been in high school, he dunks that ball. Mm-hmm. He just goes in and dunks it. There's something about being in that stage on that team, looking over his shoulder, that made him say, oh, do I really want to shoot it here? I don't think he does that if he's still in high school.
And on the next possession on defense, a wide open shot was left for a Vanderbilt player, but not by Julian Phillips' man. They were told, do not leave the three-point shooters. Phillips stuck to his man in the corner. He takes to coaching, I believe. He's a really good defender. There's something about his offensive game that was lacking for some reason.
They do enough preparing these guys on offense? Have we gone too far on talking it's all defense? Because it hasn't always been that way with Barnes.
Offense at times, it hurt your eyes to watch it. I mean, it was bad. That was the reason that team was going to have a ceiling when it came to the NCAA tournament. I don't think it was just Julian Phillips. I think Tennessee needs to revamp what it does. And taking a kid who maybe, I mean, NBA doesn't draft players they don't think can score at all. So I think that they have confidence that they'll be able to get out of him. And I think that's where Tennessee basketball needs to be twisted just a little bit.
Isn't that the story of Tennessee basketball the last few years? Is who has developed on the offensive end?
Last few years. Yeah. If you go back, look, I think he got the most out of Schofield. I think he got the most out of Grant Williams.
But I think
Just something changed. Yeah, something changed the last couple of years.
And if you look at Calipari, what he did with those one-and-done guys was he would play them, he would struggle through their growing pains early on, but by the time we got to tournament time, those guys would be star players. And I don't know that that's something that Rick Barnes is willing to do, which is struggle through the growing pains, especially on the offensive end, because if they're not there on the defensive end, he's going to yank them and he's going to put somebody else in instead of trying to work them through to get them to be competent on the defensive end because of what they can bring in athleticism.
Now, right now, there are people saying, yeah, Tennessee had a ceiling. It was higher than Duke's ceiling. And they're saying, who wants to be like Calipari because he's not winning either. So I get all that. I happen to agree with both of you. But I get what people at home are thinking and screaming at their screens right now. But at the same time, you do have to look at it and say, not only are you maybe undercutting your offense by focusing so much on defense here, but it may be eating into these guys' draft prospects at the next level, which then goes back and could hurt you on the recruiting front. This year is going to be so interesting to watch with Rick Barnes. He's got too many new guys. You know, everybody was excited about all these transfers and everything else. Then you got two guys come back. I don't know how long it's going to take to figure out what your rotation is. You have a ton of guys and a ton of guys who came here to play. So who sticks around if they don't play? But also, how does it gel? Mm-hmm. And is it more offense-friendly this year? You went out to get shooters. Rick Barnes has said that. We're already a better shooting team. He said, I don't think it, I know it. Okay. Is this do these guys come in here with the green light to fire it up? Or do we see guys, they let somebody blow by them on defense, sit next to me. Do you put up with a bad defensive end, bad play at the defensive end, from a guy who's going to go down and light you up at the other end? At some point, I think you have to. I think if the guy's going to give up two, but he's nailing threes, I'm occasionally going to say that's +1, that's +1, that's +1. I don't think they do that. This is going to be a telling year, I think. Have they gone off the deep end with defense, or was it just a one-year thing where we had nothing on offense, we had to focus on defense?
Well, the reason this is so important is because Tennessee has legitimate Final Four potential. With the guys they have coming back and the players they brought in, last year, if they were better more consistently offensively, they'd probably go to the Final Four. But they weren't, so they didn't. If they are better, they don't even have to be significantly better. If they are more consistent offensively with the potential the individual players have, they can go to a Final Four because they could drop off defensively and still be plenty good enough to win 4 games in the NCAA.
Yeah. The problem, though, is when you're trying to win games in the 60s, you have a bad shooting night, you're done.
You're done.
Yep.
Yes.
It's over.
There is no second way to victory.
No, not at all. So, look, I also think there's a disconnect right now that's larger than at any time in my life where what wins in college basketball is this, what gets you drafted in the NBA is this, and they are two very different things.
That's true. That's true. All right. When we come back, ESPN had major layoffs this week, in case you haven't seen. Well, this week happened Friday. They dropped the bomb on those people on Friday. We'll talk about that, and also what impact does that have on Tennessee? And if you're sitting there going, what does ESPN layoffs have to do with Tennessee? We'll explain next. Going back on the Sports Source.